And as Election Day is just 71 days away from today, former President Trump securing the backing of Tulsi Gabbard as he vows to bring more traditional Democrats into his camp. He's also making an appeal to service members. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Present. Out.
Marking the third anniversary of the suicide bombing in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members, former President Trump on Monday participated in a wreath-laying ceremony in Arlington National Cemetery. With him were two Marines who were injured in that attack. One was paralyzed and now in a wheelchair, and one lost his right arm and left leg.
And because of that event, we did so badly that Russia went in and invaded Ukraine. Israel was attacked, as you know, on October 7th. We have people don't respect us.
Speaking later in Detroit to the National Guard Association, Trump vows to quickly end the war in Europe and avoid a World War III. He also unveils a formal endorsement from former Congresswoman and DNC Vice Chair Tulsi Gabbard. The Iraq War veteran ran for president in 2020 before leaving the Democratic Party in 2022.
If you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump.
Trump saying traditional Democrats are supporting him further frames this election as
This fight is no longer between Democrats and Republicans. This is a fight between communism and freedom.
But the Harris campaign is taking aim at Trump for questioning if he should stay in the September 10th debate on ABC News. While the Harris campaign is accusing Trump of trying to quit, Trump on Monday responded by saying he's fine with having the mics on throughout the debate, a change of rules proposed by the Harris camp.
Rules, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on, but the agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted.
This week, Trump will campaign in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, while Harris would do a bus tour in Georgia before a rally in Savannah. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
And White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is heading to Beijing to speak with Chinese officials. This will be the first time a U.S. National Security Advisor has visited the communist country in nearly a decade. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the White House.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is meeting with the top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi and other officials with the goal of destabilizing tensions. Now, the talks will begin in Beijing on Tuesday, and this comes right after Sullivan was in Canada on Sunday meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet, where they discussed just a day later, Canada's government imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, matching the U.S. Tariff plan, as well as the European Commission's. Here's Sullivan.
The view that massive subsidies going into the Chinese electric vehicle industry have eliminated a level playing field. And so part of the economic response the U.S. has taken is responding to that. And then there are issues associated with data security, with critical infrastructure, and with the underlying questions of national security associated with connected vehicles, electric vehicles.
Now, other topics during these meetings include tensions in the South China Sea, as well as a potential invasion from China into Taiwan. Other topics include the fentanyl crisis, where the majority of the world's fentanyl, not to mention the U.S., comes from China. And it's now the #1 leading cause of death among young Americans here in the U.S. China's support for Russia's military will also be on the talks. Last week, the Biden administration said that it's imposing over 400 sanctions on companies and individuals, many of which are in China. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that this meeting has been in the works since October, but a potential Biden-Xi meeting in the future is still unclear.
As for whether this lays the tracks for another meeting with President Xi, I just don't have anything specific to point to with respect to that.
Now, both Biden and Xi are scheduled to attend the G20 summit in Brazil after the U.S. general election in November. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
So what might this trip mean for President Biden and the next president, for that matter? What are the top U.S. concerns Sullivan is expected to raise, and how will we know if this trip was ultimately a success? Joining me now to discuss is Dennis Wilder, professor and senior fellow for the Initiative for U.S.-China Dialogue on Global Issues at Georgetown University. Dennis Wilder, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, Dennis. So tomorrow, President Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, he'll begin a 3-day visit to China. This is his first trip to China, which I found surprising. Why do you think he's going now?
Well, it's actually the first trip by a national security advisor since 2016, so it's pretty unprecedented. I think the clear answer to this is that President Biden, before he leaves office as part of his legacy, wants another meeting with President Xi. And there are opportunities on the sideline of the G20 meeting in South America for the two to meet. So I think the first goal of the visit, but certainly not the only goal, will be to set up some sort of summit.
And speaking of those goals, what do you think are some of the main concerns that you would expect Sullivan to address with China?
Top of the Biden administration list is the continuing Chinese arms sales, not lethal arms, but rather manufacturing capabilities for Putin's war machine. The administration just put 200 more sanctions on the Chinese companies. It's very clear that Xi Jinping has made a decision to help Putin fight his war, again, without crossing the boundary of actually sending guns and bullets. But he's sending the machine tools, the electronic parts, all the kinds of things that can allow Putin to restore or refurbish his machine. The second issue is South China Sea. There is a very tense standoff in the South China Sea between the Philippines and China. Many people don't know this is occurring, but it is very dangerous. Of course, we are an ally. We are a defense partner with the Philippines. And so we're very worried that China could attack the Philippine Navy and that we would have to come to their defense.
And so, Dennis, what about the issues of, say, Taiwan as well? Would you lump that in there? And also something that, is always kind of mentioned, but not really, is the issue of human rights in communist China.
Right. I think, first of all, on Taiwan, there is a dangerous uptick in the number of military air flights around Taiwan. So they've almost doubled since the time that William Lai took over as the new leader in Taiwan. I think the administration will try to get the Chinese to back off. Because it's not as if William Lai is doing much that you could consider very provocative at the moment. But certainly the Chinese military, the tempo keeps rising, and that has to be of concern. On human rights, this administration, while it's said some things about human rights, has not pushed very hard. By the way, I think a Harris administration, which would be more inclined to push human rights issues. Of course, she's a great proponent of women's rights, like Hillary Clinton, who went to Beijing and really discussed those issues. I think we could be a bit surprised to see Harris more involved in issues like the question of the Dalai Lama, of religion in China, than Biden has been.
Now, Dennis, as we discussed, we're not really expecting any major announcements from this trip, perhaps, like you said, laying the foundation for a meeting between Xi and Biden. How will we know if this visit was ultimately successful? What are some of the barometers?
Well, the key thing is if there's an announcement that they will meet, that there will be a summit, that will be a sign of success. The other thing is there are rumors that he will have a meeting with Xi Jinping himself. That would be extraordinary, very unusual. That would show that Xi Jinping really does want to have a meeting with President Biden. So I would say those are two factors.
And just lastly, how could Sullivan's visit here set the tone for the next administration, whoever that may be, particularly in the ongoing tension over many of the issues that we just discussed?
Well, I don't think anybody should have illusions that the era of strategic competition with the Chinese will end. That will continue to be a very much part of American foreign policy, whether it is President Trump or President Harris. I would say that what they will try and do is lock in some of the achievements on things like getting Chinese assistance on fentanyl and the problem of precursors, trying to get the Chinese to reduce tensions around Taiwan. And again, although I think it may be a fool's errand, trying to get the Chinese to back off of their support for Putin and the war in Ukraine. But I'm not optimistic on that one.
Dennis Weiler, really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Pavel Durov, founder of the Telegram messaging app, is currently being detained in Paris following his arrest on Saturday. French President Emmanuel Macron denies allegations that the arrest was made for political purposes, saying today that it's part of an ongoing investigation. Prosecutors have not yet released the exact charges against Durov, but his platform has often received criticism from Western governments. Some of them say that Telegram's content moderation practices leave openings for criminals to use the app for money laundering, drug trafficking, and sexual exploitation of minors. Telegram says it has nearly 1 billion users worldwide. The platform issued a statement saying its CEO has nothing to hide because the firm follows the laws of the European Union. Durov's arrest has sparked significant backlash, notably from tech figures, Elon Musk criticizing the move as an attack on free speech. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.